Now, let's start with the main topic of the day. This year's Workers' Day commemoration in Nigeria was one of reflection on the welfare of workers, effects of COVID-19, minimum wage, the Pensions Act, and more. Punariman Feintola of Arise News reports.
May the 1st marks International Workers' Day. The date was chosen in 1889 and is now celebrated in nations around the world, including Nigeria. It's been a public holiday in the country for the past 40 years, but workers are still having to push for better rights and welfare. In 2019, President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law an increase of the minimum wage from 18 to 30,000 naira per month. But not all states have put this in place. Now, several unions in Nigeria are on strike. They say the government simply isn't listening.
The contribution of Nigerian workers at this very unusual time. In sync with our convictions, we must say that our country has not made the desired progress in protecting workers and the Nigerians from the impact of COVID-19, which has brought with it the daunting challenges of decent work, social inclusion, protection, and the distress of people's welfare. Despite the best effort of government, organized labor, and private sector employers, millions of Nigerian workers have lost their jobs, their means of livelihood, and have slipped into destitution, lack, and misery. The weaknesses of our social protection system has aggravated the pain and frustration of our compatriots.
With low wages and long hours, life isn't always easy for workers in Nigeria.
We will suffer undue delay in the payment of this ex gratia and other benefits, particularly the contributory pension. It's always delayed, and this sends some of our workers to an early grave.
The major problem Nigerian workers are facing today is insecurity. I think if that one can be addressed, everybody's mind will be at rest. Because if you are working, at the end of the day, whatever you are earning, you are afraid of even sleeping, you are afraid of going to the market, you are afraid of going out. If that one could be addressed, every other thing can follow suit.
We are expecting the government to look into the issue of the Pension Act, for them to review it, that 2014 Pension Act. Most of our senior civil servants have retired now. Most of them are suffering. They are still believing and, depending on the same old salary they have been receiving.
But the Nigerian government says it is making efforts to improve living conditions, including increasing pensions.
The Nigerian Constitution in section 1733 says that pensions should be readjusted to move on a sliding scale with salary reviews, or every 5 years, whichever comes first. Luckily, both were coming together, and Mr. President has got the issue for the Nigerian pensioners, and it takes effect from today, May 1, because all pensioners will get their pay from May and get arrears starting from 18th of April 2019.
Workers in the country are hoping that this time officials stick to their word and follow through on their promises. Punariman Feintola, Arise News.
Joining us to discuss this and more is Joe Ajaero, Deputy President, Nigeria Labour Congress and General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Employees. Mr. Ajaero, very good to have you on the program. This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. Well, we've listened to the Minister of Labour and Productivity there. The Minister of State for Labour also spoke. And the two of them, these two government officials, at yesterday's occasion in Abuja, they urged Labour to have faith in the goodness of governance and that Labour should count its blessings. So if Labour were to count its blessings, what would those blessings be?
Thank you very much, sir. I think what we did was marking the May Day. We didn't have much to celebrate. And I need to draw a line between the two. In the presence of COVID-19, Yesterday's activity was more or less lamentation, of what we have passed through within this period. Even for us to function as a movement in the midst of COVID-19 was difficult. There were a lot of violations by even employers of labor, but we couldn't gather together, because we have to maintain social distance. At inception of this whole process, there was lockdown. We couldn't move. So, and if you look at it, 1 year after, I think we were trying to lament those periods that were a period of loss. And then if they are telling us that we should relax, things are going to improve. I think it's better we start from what we have now. As maybe the minimum wage, is full implementation by states and other parastatals, and the private sector anyway. If we get that, we know that tomorrow will be very bright. If we don't, and you tell us to be hopeful of tomorrow, when yesterday is still haunting us today, I think it will be very difficult for us to believe. Besides, the COVID-19 is still here, not fully eradicated. So, and the workers were at the worst hit. When they say the first person entered Nigeria, that had COVID-19, we all realized that workers cleared the person at the airport. And the next person that carried the person was a taxi driver. And when he reached the hotel, hotel workers, and when he was sick, the workers took him to the hospital where he met the same workers. So if you take it further, you discover that the thing is having a dangerous effect on the workers. So what we did yesterday was to lament, and count our losses. But if they had assured us that things are going to be better, we'll look for the better. But meanwhile, on the issues and the agreement that have been reached, we'll be enforcing them. Since we seem to be having a glimpse, a kind of light, on this COVID. The restrictions are no. We have marked out to go to Imo before long on the issues there. We have equally marked out to go to Kaduna. We're trying to give our colleagues who are on fasting now, some time to conclude in the case of Kaduna. So we are starting forcefully from those two areas, and there are no two ways about it.
Well, I know that the theme for yesterday's event was Save Lives at Work. And there was an expression of concern about, yes, COVID-19 being a workplace disease, you referred to that, about occupational health and safety. And Labour is also asking for a review of the Factories Act now, and concerns expressed about rising inflation. Now, how do you intend to get government or the private sector to address some of these issues, particularly with regard to a review of the Factories Act? What specifically do you want reviewed, and what is the strategy?
Well, if you look at the issue of Workmen Compensation Act, it was drawn at a time that they were still talking about 1 naira, 2 naira. Even the compensation attached to it is not in tune with the reality of the moment. If you watch the Employee Act, that is being covered by the Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund, there seemed to be a kind of one seemed to be overlapping, and then we needed to look at it very well. To look at the cost, look at some of the things they captured as occupational health then have changed. Occupational health did not capture COVID-19. It did not even capture HIV/AIDS. When they were enforced. So we need to look at them. And last month, the National Labour Advisory Council was inaugurated in Owerri. That is their duty to look at some of those issues, and bring it up for us to forward to the National Assembly, for legislation. So that is, we are doing our own homework. We have even done some homework, even in Lagos here with some of the National Assembly members, a kind of retreat where we look at some of those issues. We have a draft, already on all those acts and labor laws. So we are going to forward them to make sure that they are in tune with realities of the moment.
Okay, yesterday there were activities in Abuja and also in some other states of the Federation. But in Kano State, state officials boycotted May Day. Why was that the case? Is it because Labour in Kano State is accusing the state government of owing up to about 26 billion in arrears? And the NLC chairman in Kano State, we were told, had to delete in his speech sections referring to government officials. Not even one person from the Kano State government reportedly, attended the event. And you said, Labour will be going to Imo, to Kaduna State to address certain outstanding issues. Would Kano be included as part of the target of Labour at the federal level?
Well, we had issues with Kano about 3 or 4 weeks ago when they decided to pay maybe 50%. And the workers there declared an action. We sent a delegation there and they met with government officials. That matter was resolved, to an extent. If that is the reason why they didn't come, then too bad. But I know that even from our own sector, even in Abuja, the 2 or 3 MDs in the power sector, when we were trying to do small discussion, went to Kano. I think probably a wife or whatever of the emir or so, I think the emir also was bereaved. And all of them, went to Kano. I'm talking from my own side, the information I got. This MD went to Kano, the MD NAPTI went to Kano, the MD TCN went to Kano for such. I wouldn't know whether it's connected to this. But even at that, even when you have a state function, so to say, you must send somebody, to represent you, at the May Day celebration. So the reason behind it, we are yet to really find out, because today is Sunday, tomorrow is public holidays. Hopefully, we are going to get to the root of it.
Okay, yes, yesterday I was reading some of the comments. One of the Labour leaders said the Nigerian worker has become a beggar in Nigeria today. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar said that, look, the new national minimum wage that we're talking about can even just get you a bag of rice in today's Nigeria. Now, this new national minimum wage, what is Labour doing about this? How many states are paying the new national minimum wage? And where do we stand with that whole threat by Labour that the new national minimum wage being a matter of law, President Buhari having signed it into law on April 18, I think, 2019. Now, what has happened to those states that are insisting that, look, they will not pay because they cannot pay?
Well, it's unfortunate that those states are saying they will disobey the law in the first instance because, like you said, it's a matter of law. And it was a product of negotiation. It's not
tripartite.
Yes. It's not like Labour came and said you must pay this. When we are going for negotiation, we came up with 90-something thousand. Later came to 50-something, 56. Most states say they can pay 56. But the same states were saying that no, they can pay more than that based on their capacity. There are states that have capacity to pay 50, 60,000. But because we have to take along the weak, so to say. And then we considered the states, because all the states were represented at the discussion. And at the end of it, for them to now turn back to say they will not pay, that is what is baffling us. But like I mentioned before, the problem and challenges we had with COVID-19 is one, but we're not going to use it as an excuse for not. Not up to 50% of the states have implemented it. Some implemented it just, in error, by default. Immediately they give the first people, maybe level 1, step 1. Of course, there are no people at that level these days. In a whole state, or federal, you can not get up to 20 people. When they put that level, they start at maybe 200 or 300. So the differential, they didn't implement it. In most states, that's where we have problem. Not that they are the first person, the least person is not earning 30,000. But when they move ahead, you can see somebody, who is 5 times his senior getting just 1,000 on top of what he was earning before. So that's where we're having problem.
But wasn't that, the outcome of all of that negotiation over what is called consequential adjustment?
You see, in states, that should be done between the state labor and the government.
But NLC provided a template.
Yes. So when they start to pay, without negotiation, without discussing it, it creates problem. So I think that's why in Kwara we had an issue there how many weeks ago. The state workers had to go embark on an action, and in some other areas, NSC had actually given them directive. But as an institution, we still have our own challenges. If we have 36 state chairmen, not all of them are very strong. Not all of them are away from their governors, because this is a problem that we must equally look at, and that was why the governors are sponsoring the motion, for labor to be decentralized, to be in the concurrent list, so that those guys that are their employees, they will tell them what to do or they sack them. We have various cases where maybe NSC chairman in a state has been sacked by a governor because the governor is his employer. In most cases, they want that victimization. And some of them who don't have liver will say instead of them to be fired, they behave. It's only when the national comes in, or maybe we mix them up with those in the private sector who are not employees of the state governments. So a lot of issues we will have our challenge like any other sector in the country.
Okay, let's look at that problem that you say we should look at, which is the leadership of labor. You've talked about some of the leaders at the state levels are not being strong enough. But the major criticism of the organized labor today is that even at the national level, in fact, some people, they just say categorically that the leadership of the Labour Congress in Nigeria has been compromised, or that it's a lethargic leadership. Now, you guys fought for 5 years. For 5 years, you led another group, the United Labour Congress. It was only mid-July 2020 that you guys reconciled. Do you think that that is a problem, that indeed the leadership of Labour has been compromised? And in fact, people go further and say, look, the leadership of the Labour Congress in Nigeria today is just interested in individual interests rather than issues of labor in Nigeria.
Well,
guilty as charged?
Not guilty, sir. Well, thank you very much. You see, for some time now, we have been getting this jab and vibe, from Nigerians. And it's worrisome. I wouldn't know whether there's a communication gap or whether Nigerians are not seeing us the way they should see us. Yes, I led a group and we're out there. And we are guilty if they say labor. And but when we came back, definitely we were supposed to be stronger, because like you had yesterday, the unity now is supposed to give us more strength. And that's why we are pushing. But let me look at it, clearly, sir. I was in the media, and I know you were one of our boss. I was in the vanguard. During the military era, here in Lagos, we gave a fight. I suffered detention, some of us did. During the military, the nuns gave a fight. During the military, the lawyers were in court almost every day to challenge the activities of the military. Today, from all the cases of Ghani Fire, even the cases of Guardian newspaper and the military are courageous steps taken by those individuals. During that period, even labor was, proscribed. No labor. The same thing with IBB's period. I was a student union leader. The anti-SAP riot, labor was proscribed. Labor wasn't there. We came from the student community and moved out. And that was when IBB was saying that this is civilian coup and whatever. Now, the issue of fight and resistance is not an exclusive preserve of labor. The other components, where is the NANS today, sir? Where is the NBA? Where is the NUJ and other groups, sir? I'm not trying to, give excuses, but I know that no one group can do it alone. And I'm trying to locate this with the kind of, a problem we have in the society, that it has nothing to do with the labor. If labor is behaving this way, check around, sir, you hardly see even people who were too tough from the student union group entering labor. When you have that history and that pedigree, you tend to do better. And if labor is not left for, and people are coming out of school, they are not active. Okay, yesterday we were at the May Day rally. ordinary NANS will come there, and then they will display, they will issue statements in that order. That connection, that connect, is lacking. And we can't do it alone. Labor do this. That was the same problem, sir, when we were fighting for privatization of electricity. They say, oh, you guys want to save your job. But as tariff is increasing or whatever, every Nigerian will feel the pain. If there's inflation in this country, it's not labor alone, sir. If we want to restrict labor unionism to economism, we now look at, whenever there's inflation, we ask for more money. But it shouldn't be so. We seem to still be the only voice, that are still talking. Maybe our voice may be faint and is not loud. We need the activities of... I have coordinated the 20 whatever strike in Lagos here. The second day, traders, taxi drivers came out to fight us. That they have not worked for 2 days. How can we shut down? With serious resistance at Ojuelegwere. They don't allow us to go. So, and who are you protesting? Some of us looked at it at, maybe if with the little we are earning, there's no connect again. Market women that were attending our May Day and whatever connecting with us, they are not there. I'm not sure I'm hearing the voice of religious leaders. So I think it's a societal problem, sir. Rather than labor being the only people that are guilty, so I think we are all guilty on this matter.
Okay, but how do you address it? Because as labor, your main mandate is to protect the interests of workers and their rights. So how do you mobilize these now disjointed, alienated constituencies that can make labor stronger?
Yes, I promise you that we are rebuilding. I didn't come here to exonerate labor totally. There are one or two issues that we are facing. Even our membership has been so depleted, either through privatization or SAG. If you watch a union like the Textile Union, you discover that...
Textile and Garments Union.
Yes, you discover that...
Ajaero and Adams
yes. You discover that almost all the textile companies, the Ajaero Textile, the Kaduna Textile, everywhere, up to Isolo here, all the textile companies have collapsed. Now, and you are talking of mobilizing workers. When the workers are not working, where do you have the worker, to mobilize? Even in the electricity sector, sir, after the privatization, the situation went down. It's like we lost almost half of the workforce. The same thing with MPA. Nitel is not there, And then we're now trying to see how to, gather momentum again. People outside wouldn't know some of the problems we have and we are still having. Now, the nature of job continue to change. You see, casualization, outsourcing. 50 people you see in the workplace, especially in the private sector, are not staff. They outsource them to one individual who will collect money and pay them. The kind of third-party employment. Before, contract of employment is between the worker and his employer. This one, you don't know who his employer is. And in the same factory, you see about 5 contractors, supplying workers. Now, these things are affecting us so much. But like I said, sir, we will not continue to lament and agonize. We have resolved to organize so that we can move forward. Even from the ashes of old, we can rebuild, the nation or the sector or the labor movement. And we are still going to connect to our allies. However, we'll be political any moment from now. Because it's important, because we have allowed the field, to be occupied, the space to be occupied, by some other actors. But this time around, we are going to show interest, not necessarily contesting, but to be interested on who becomes our leader, either the National Assembly, the state, or the executive. Those are some of the things we have resolved to do after our last National Executive Council meeting, sir.
Okay, well, one of the points raised by the Minister of State for Labor, Festus Keyamo, yesterday was he was claiming, as part of the achievement of government, the consequential adjustment of pension benefits for retirees. Has that happened? Is that really something that the government can talk about with confidence?
Well, I'm not sure the federal government controls up to 20% of the workforce. Okay. So when they do such things at the federal, they will say they have done this. State governors in some states, they are not even paying pension. They are not. If you check pensioners, some pensioners in some states don't get up to 5,000 as pension. So those are areas we have to look at. It's not like when we do consequential adjustment for pensioners, at the Federal Civil Service, we now say we have achieved something. Part of the job of his ministry, Ministry of Labor, is also to regulate, labor and industrial relation practice in the country. Apart from being an employer of labor, which was on the basis at which he spoke, but as a regulator, has he shown any interest on what happens in the state? How can we, manage that? Because these people are Nigerians, and that's where majority of Nigerians reside. What is happening in the private sector? The private sector, even with the new pension policy, they deduct people's pension, they will not remit. The PFS will be talking. My sector will have written so many letters. When you deduct somebody's pension, you don't remit. Is that not a criminal offense? Why did you divert the money to? So, and then the Minister of Labor should be able to look into this. It's not enough to make rules, but I think some people should be able, apart from enforcing it, to regulate it and monitor its implementation. Okay, in recent times, we've been hearing comments, we've been, having issues with the government saying, one, the NNPC can no longer sustain the subsidy regime in the petroleum sector, or particularly in the downstream sector. The NNPC claims it has spent maybe about 111 billion naira providing subsidy. We don't know when that will happen. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, has been saying that if we want to be realistic, the pump price of fuel per liter should be about 241 naira per liter. And at the moment, we are heavily subsidized. I know that this was one of the issues that organized labor is discussing with the government. Then there's also electricity. You are General Secretary. In addition to being Deputy President of NLC, you are General Secretary of the Union of Electricity Employers. And now we're being told that, I think on April 26, there was a statement issued by the regulator saying that there will be a minor tariff review. I thought that labor, having been told, 3 months, there will be some kind of relief for Nigerians. That was in October 2020. Now, where are you with those negotiations on pump price of fuel and electricity tariff with the Nigerian government?
Well, let's call a spade a spade. From my lamentations in this studio, you discover that our problem is leadership and governance.
Keyamo was saying that you should celebrate the goodness of governance.
Yeah, whether Keyamo's government or previous ones, our problem has been leadership. And leadership is that will make use of human and material resources for the benefit of the governed, for public good. And that is why I challenge him or anybody to say why we should now be an oil exporting country and then we buy oil. Because what they're telling us about subsidy is like buying all the money we use to buy oil. I've never seen such a prodigal economy before. I used to have a grandmother in the village, and after, harvesting her cassava, she would take the one we are going to use for gari and even fufu, and the remnant, she will sell it to the market. She doesn't sell her cassava to go and buy gari. As primitive as she is, as local as my grandmother, was then, she would divide it. This one will sell it as cassava. This one will process it to be gari. Growing up, we didn't buy from my grandmother. We didn't buy gari any day. And now somebody is telling me that we'll get a crude. We'll sell crude. Add transportation to it, shipping. We'll bring it back. Now the difference in transportation and all that.
Landing cost.
Landing cost. Fine. We now call it subsidy. I want to say in this studio that there's no subsidy. Is that the case?
No, that's not the information that is out there.
There is no subsidy, sir. You see, because we need to get this out. If the subsidy is difference of what it costs you to take it back, okay, let me tell you, even from the same primitive economy, under barter trade, I'll give you this barrel, I'll take this. You still determine the price of and the impact of what you have exchanged. When you have comparative and competitive advantage, you make use of it. But to tell us that every time when oil price increases at the international market, when we should be happy that we're going to make more money, they'll be telling you here that they are going to increase, price of petroleum products. Should Nigerians...
Yeah, but again, we're not meeting our quota. Our quota is about 2.3 million liters per day, but we're barely doing 1.3 million liters per day.
That's what we're doing. So if that is what we're doing, that is where we are.
So if the budget is pegged at $57 per barrel and oil is selling at $65 per barrel, we're still not getting enough revenue.
Why must we peg our budget on a mono product? Countries that don't have oil, are running budget and effectively. So why are we going to peg there's nobody, let me say this, that will peg his budget on a product that there are some other extraneous variables that will affect it. You don't have control over it. You not peg your budget on it. So if it goes down totally, Nigeria will pack up. How much are we making from inland revenue? How much are we making from customs and all these other areas? How much? We need to find out, sir. And once try to see whether we can look at our budget, even without oil, because this oil can dry up. Until we do this, we don't have foresight. We have to look at it. We can't say, oh, this oil price must be this. Even when oil price increase, sir, I'm telling you now that it is a problem for us. Because we have to buy finished product there and then inflict the injury on Nigerians. We are not even praying daily for oil price to increase at the international market to give us more money. We are not crying because if it increases, they increase the price here. Instead of Nigerian money revenue for the so-called budget, to go high. There's a problem, sir. And some of us who are not that very intelligent and educated need to understand this ABCD. Why do we suffer when we are supposed to make more dollar because of the price of oil up there? Now, oil refining is not a rocket science, sir. In Biafra, sorry to say this, during the Civil War, with all this drone, whatever, they were refining oil. In the Niger Delta today, sir, we have asked them, talk to boys, in the Niger Delta, loosen up about it. They refine petroleum products. So by the time they make it as a rocket science, we're going to build a refinery with $1.5 billion. We're going to do this. It's becoming a problem. We have to look inwards on how to refine this product and legalize it. It's important, sir.
Well, I also asked a question about electricity, which is
on the issue of electricity, that is my area. You see, I mentioned something about variables that you don't have control. The NAC came out with about 3 variables, to sell
That's the National Electricity Regulatory Commission.
Yes.
NERC.
That, the people buying gas from the GENCO generating companies are buying it in dollar. And gas is produced in Nigeria. And they are buying it at $2.50. Other producers in the country, the cement companies, whatever, are buying it at $1.50. And in the committee that you made reference to, I worked with, we said we can start by allowing them to equally buy it at the same price with other producers in the country. Instead of increasing their own to be $2.50, let them align with the ones on $1.50. While we look at other, if you do that, the price of tariff will crash. Because 70% of power generated in Nigeria is through gas. And that was a very bad one because of the price of gas. Countries don't do it. You don't have 70% on one source. When we have hydro sources, we have coal, we have other sources in the country that could have mixed it up. Ordinary Mambila, can give us 4,000 megawatts or 3,000 something. That is hydro. And then we are busy, looking at gas. The second variable is the issue of exchange rate. If dollar is going for $500, 500 naira per dollar, they will increase tariff. If there's inflation today, they will increase tariff. Now, all the machines on the past plants, some of them are 40 years old, they bought them. It's because of those machines that they're talking of inflation and the exchange rate. Even the ones they bought when the naira was stronger than the dollar, they are using them now to increase tariff around this product. Now, let me get this fact, sir. Because when they start all those their economic abracadabra, if you increase electricity tariff this month, there will be inflation next month. And then the same person who increased it, that created or instigated inflation, will still come to say there's inflation, increase tariff. And now the thing is moving around. There's no way you increase tariff this month and it will not lead to inflation. The producers, the industries that are going to pay high, their products and everything will go high because they must factor the cost of power. Now, is that a very good economic policy? And they now say minor review, and then they...
That's what Minister of Power, Saleh Maman, is saying. He says it's minor review.
Well, I think...
In line with the power sector reform
I think we have a problem there because a minister is not supposed to talk about tariff increase.
No, he quoted the law, section 76
that's the duty,
of the power sector reform.
That is the duty of the regulator in a privatized sector. The state goes off from it. And that's why you see now the state will still say it is this amount. They made us to understand that it will be based on market dynamics and market forces. But now when there is a pronouncement from the state, whether it's going to be 1 naira or 2 naira, I think it's a clear violation, of the market, so to say. I think the problem is that they came and deceived Nigerians. Another scam. There's service reflective tariff. If you get to 12 hours, you'll be paid this. But when you don't get 12 hours, you don't get your money reversed. There's nothing like service reflective tariff if Nigerians don't have electricity. Between 8 years now, when they privatize, it has been the same 4,000 megawatts. Now, how do we measure improvement in the power sector? How do we? Is it when I give you 12 hours? Meanwhile, the generating capacity is still constant for how many years? And tariff has been increased 5 times between that time and now. This docility of the Nigerian people in asking questions, it will cost us a lot. I have not seen NEC, the Regulatory Commission, protecting consumers. It seems their job in the last few years has been to increase tariff each time they come on board, to increase tariff. The issue of metering, which we have argued, and the committee said federal government has provided money for houses to be metered. How far is it going? It's not being met. What is the duty of NAC, instead of pushing the government, pushing the discourse and others to make sure that people are metered. And then what do they call them? The people that are meter test station. Their duty is equally to ensure that these meters are effective and efficient, that nobody manipulates it. We're talking of install meter. If we install meter and the meters are manipulated, the money you pay today can finish tomorrow. Then there is an agency, NEMSA, that is responsible to ensure that these meters are healthy and it's error. Nobody can tamper with it. Where are they? Are they working? Do they have staff? So these issues are some of the problems we have in both sectors.
One of the things that the federal government has been talking about is poverty reduction. They had the National Economic Growth Recovery Plan. And then only a few days ago, the federal government approved a National Poverty Reduction through Economic Growth Plan strategy submitted by the Presidential Economic Advisory Council. Do you think that all these poverty reduction, poverty alleviation schemes will be in the best interest of the Nigerian worker?
Well, I think they should teach us how to fish. They should stop giving us fish. If you watch, even during this COVID-19 and whatever, even from our sector, and other places, the poor workers, the poor Nigerians, whether 5,000 or whatever should be given to them. if you do this till thy kingdom come, poverty will not leave us. If we are refining petroleum products here, there will be not less than 200 or 100 products. If you have a petrochemical industry sited some of these places, each of them will accommodate not less than 300,000 or 250,000 people working in those areas. They earn a living. Not when you give us money. You give people money to do farming. You calculate, the weather. Calculate if the start will rise, and they plant rice, because it's not every place that even rice will do well. And some people I accosted in my own village, they say that birds came and finished their rice. You don't have control over it. They don't have fertilizer. They don't even have farmland. The crisis we're even having now between the herdsmen and the farmers is another problem. People can't even go to their farm. So and that's one of our poverty, is it reduction or elimination strategies. People must get good education, sir. And the people that have good education, they can have education for self-reliance. Some of them can employ themselves. You must equally provide employment. Before privatization, sir, a company like NEPA, because it has aged workforce, every year, about 2,000 or so will retire. At least you employ another 2,000. The same thing with an MPA, the same thing with NITEL. When that happens, you are bringing new people into the system. But you don't have such agencies now. They have all been sold out.
Well, Mr. Joe Ajaero, Deputy President, Nigeria Labour Congress, General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Employees, I would like to thank you very much for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. Well, I don't know whether to say Happy Workers' Day or because you said earlier that it was a day of lamentation.
Yes, sir.
But it's fine. Thank you very much for joining us.
Nice meeting you.